You are thinking about your life more than you are living it. You are thinking about your life more than you are living it. And you might not even realize you're doing it. You're sitting in your room, but your mind is somewhere else. You're eating, but you're thinking about tomorrow. You're talking to someone, but part of your mind is replaying something that happened yesterday. You're lying in bed, exhausted, but instead of sleeping, your mind starts asking questions. What am I doing with my life? What if this doesn't work? What did they really mean by that? What should I have said? What happens next? And suddenly, the day is gone. You were there physically, but were you actually there? Because there is a strange way of living where you spend almost your entire life thinking about life, instead of experiencing it. You analyze the moment. You interpret it. You judge it. You compare it. You predict what comes next. You replay what already happened. And somewhere in all of that thinking, the actual moment quietly passes. Think about how often you've done this. You're about to meet someone. Before you even see them, your mind starts preparing. What should I say? What if the conversation becomes awkward? What if they don't like me? What if I say something stupid? And then you finally meet them, but you're still thinking. You're monitoring yourself. How am I standing? How do I sound? Did they react strangely? Should I say something else? Instead of experiencing the conversation, you're watching yourself have the conversation. You're there, but you're not completely there. And afterward, you go home and replay everything. Why did I say that? Why didn't I say this? Maybe they thought I was weird. Maybe I should have handled it differently. And now the conversation that lasted 20 minutes has become something your mind can spend 3 hours experiencing again. Except this time, you're not actually experiencing it. You're experiencing your memory of the experience. This happens with almost everything. You go on a trip. You take photographs. You think about how beautiful the place is. You wonder whether you're getting good footage. You think about posting it. You compare it with other places you've seen online. And then you come home with hundreds of photographs, but strangely few memories of actually being there. You eat something delicious, but instead of tasting it, you're watching something on your phone. You sit with someone you love, but you're thinking about work. You lie under the night sky, but you're worrying about tomorrow. You finally get what you've been working toward, and within minutes, your mind starts asking, what's next? This is one of the strangest things about being human. We can be given exactly what we wanted, and still mentally leave the room. Your mind is incredibly good at leaving the present. Can travel backward. Can travel forward. It can construct entire conversations that have never happened. Can create futures that don't exist. Can resurrect people who aren't here. Can replay moments that cannot be changed. And because thought feels so immediate, you can forget that thought is happening inside your experience. You start treating thought as if it were reality itself. If your mind says, something is going to go wrong, you feel the fear now, even though nothing has happened. If your mind says, they probably don't like me, you feel rejected now, even though you don't actually know what they think. If your mind says, I've wasted so much time, you feel regret now, even though the past isn't physically happening again. The thought creates an experience, and because the experience is real, you assume the thought must be true. But those are two different things. Imagine you're lying in bed at night. The room is quiet. Nothing is happening. And then your mind remembers something embarrassing you did 5 years ago. Suddenly, your body reacts. You cringe. You feel uncomfortable. Maybe you even say, why did I do that? But where is that event? It's not happening right now. The room is still quiet. You're still in bed. The people involved may not even remember it. But your mind has brought the event back. And for a few seconds, you are living inside a memory. This is the incredible power of thought. But it has a darker side. Because the same mind that can bring back the past can also manufacture a future. You imagine tomorrow's conversation. You imagine failing. You imagine being rejected. You imagine something going wrong. You imagine losing someone. You imagine not being good enough. And your body reacts as if the imagined future deserves an emotional response right now. Your heart beats faster. Your muscles tense. You feel anxious. You can't sleep. But tomorrow hasn't happened. You are suffering from something that exists primarily as a possibility inside your mind. And this is where overthinking becomes so exhausting. The mind believes that if it thinks enough, can prevent uncertainty. It keeps analyzing because it believes the next thought might finally give it control. Maybe if I understand why they did that, I'll feel better. Maybe if I figure out exactly what will happen, I'll feel safe. Maybe if I replay the past enough, I'll find the mistake. Maybe if I think about my future long enough, I'll know what to do. But sometimes, you're not solving the problem. You're simply thinking around it. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a swimming pool. You've never learned to swim, so you decide to understand swimming before getting into the water. You read about buoyancy. You study the physics. You watch tutorials. You memorize techniques. You learn about breathing. You understand how the human body moves through water. You become an expert on swimming without ever getting into the pool. Would you actually know what swimming feels like? No. You would know about swimming, and that's different. You can know everything about the temperature of water without feeling it. You can understand the mechanics of floating without floating. You can study the movement of waves without entering the ocean. At some point, you have to leave the shore, and life is like that. You can spend years trying to understand life before allowing yourself to live it. You can analyze relationships without fully opening yourself to one. You can research happiness without allowing yourself to enjoy a moment. You can study confidence without doing the thing that scares you. You can plan your future endlessly without taking the first step. You can think about becoming a different person without ever behaving differently. And this is where thinking becomes a trap. Because thinking feels productive, feels like you're doing something, but sometimes you're simply standing on the shore describing the ocean. Maybe you've been waiting for the moment when everything finally makes sense. When you'll understand yourself, understand your purpose, understand what happened, understand what you should do, understand where your life is going. And then you'll finally start living. But what if that moment never comes? What if life doesn't become understandable first? What if understanding is something that comes through living? You don't understand every relationship before entering it. You don't understand every journey before beginning it. You don't know exactly who you'll become before becoming them. You discover. You adjust. You make mistakes. You experience. You learn. And then you look backward and realize, oh, now I understand. Not because you thought your way into the answer, because you lived your way into it. Think about childhood. Children don't usually need a philosophical explanation before enjoying something. Give a child a puddle, and they may jump into it. Give them a cardboard box, and suddenly it's a spaceship. Give them a ball, and they're playing. Give them music, and they're moving. At some point, something changes. You start becoming self-conscious. You start thinking about how you look, how you're perceived, whether you're doing things correctly, whether you're being productive, whether you're wasting time, whether what you're doing has value. And slowly, experience gets replaced by commentary. You don't just watch the sunset. You think, this is beautiful. Then, I should take a picture. Then, I wonder if this will look good on Instagram. Then, why don't I have more moments like this? And suddenly, the sunset has become a psychological project. There is nothing wrong with thinking. That's important. Thinking is one of the greatest abilities humans have. It helps us solve problems, build civilizations, create art, understand science, plan our future, reflect on mistakes. The problem isn't thought. The problem is believing thought is the whole of life. Thought is a tool. It is not the entire experience. You don't need to stop thinking. You need to stop following every thought as if it deserves your attention. The thought appears. You can notice it, and you can continue experiencing what's actually happening. Imagine you're sitting beside a river. Leaves are floating downstream. One leaf appears. You watch it. Another comes. You watch that one too. You don't jump into the river to stop every leaf. You don't need to analyze where every leaf came from. You don't need to chase it downstream. You simply notice. Thoughts can be like that. A thought appears. What if I fail? Notice it. Another. Maybe they don't like me. Notice it. Another. I should have done this differently. Notice it. You don't have to fight it. You don't have to prove it wrong. You don't have to solve it. You don't even have to believe it. You can simply recognize, that's a thought. And then return to what is actually happening. Try it right now. Wherever you are, notice your surroundings. Don't describe them mentally. Just look. Notice the shapes, the light, the distance, the movement. Notice the sounds. Maybe there's traffic, a fan, a bird, people talking, your own breathing. Notice your body, the pressure of the chair, your feet touching the floor, the temperature of the air, and notice what happens when you stop trying to interpret everything. For a moment, there is simply experience. You don't have to call it anything. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to decide whether the moment is good or bad. It simply is, and you've probably experienced this before without realizing it. Think about a moment when you were completely absorbed in something. Maybe playing a sport, driving on an empty road, listening to music, working out, drawing, gaming, walking somewhere beautiful, talking to someone you genuinely connected with. For a few moments, you weren't constantly thinking about yourself. You weren't asking, am I doing this correctly? You weren't checking whether you were enjoying yourself. You were simply doing it. And afterward, you might have thought, that was amazing. Notice the paradox. The moment became enjoyable partly because you weren't constantly evaluating whether it was enjoyable. You were inside the experience. This is why some of your happiest memories are not necessarily the moments you planned perfectly. They're often accidental. A stupid joke with a friend, a random conversation at midnight, getting caught in the rain, a meal that wasn't supposed to be special, a spontaneous trip, a song playing at exactly the right moment, a completely ordinary evening that somehow became unforgettable. You weren't trying to create a memory. You were simply there. And then the moment became a memory by itself. But there's another reason we escape into thought. Sometimes the present is uncomfortable, and thinking gives us somewhere else to go. If you're lonely, you can imagine another life. If you're uncertain, you can plan. If you're hurt, you can replay the past. If you're bored, you can scroll. If you're afraid, you can analyze. The mind becomes an escape room, and sometimes that's useful. But if you live there permanently, you stop experiencing the life that's actually available to you. You can spend years preparing to live, and never realize that preparation became your life. Maybe you're waiting until you're more confident. Then you'll travel. Then you'll meet people. Then you'll start creating. Then you'll pursue the thing you really want. Maybe you're waiting until your body looks better, until you have more money, until your career is settled, until your relationship is perfect, until you understand yourself, until you're no longer anxious, until you're finally ready. But life doesn't send you a notification saying, congratulations, you are now ready to begin. At some point, you have to enter the water, while you're still uncertain, while you're still imperfect, while you still have questions, while you still don't know exactly how things will turn out. Because uncertainty isn't a malfunction in life. Uncertainty is part of life. And this might be one of the hardest things for an overthinking mind to accept. You will never know everything before you act. You will never have complete certainty. You will never fully understand another person. You will never completely predict the future. You will never eliminate every possible mistake. You will never think your way into a life without risk. So eventually, you have to choose between two things. You can keep demanding certainty, or you can learn to move without it. That doesn't mean being reckless. It means accepting that experience contains uncertainty. You can make a reasonable decision and still not know what happens next. You can love someone without knowing how long they'll stay. You can start something without knowing whether you'll succeed. You can step into the water without knowing exactly what it will feel like. And that's okay. Maybe you don't need another answer. Maybe you need another experience. Instead of spending another hour thinking about whether you should go somewhere, go. Instead of thinking about whether you should start exercising, put on your shoes. Instead of imagining what the conversation will be like, have the conversation. Instead of endlessly planning the project, make the first imperfect version. Instead of thinking about whether you should enjoy your life more, look around. There is probably already something happening that you aren't fully experiencing. And here's the strange thing. When you begin living more directly, your thoughts may actually become quieter. Not because you force them to stop, but because they no longer need to carry the entire burden of your life. You don't need to mentally rehearse every conversation when you're willing to actually have conversations. You don't need to endlessly imagine the future when you're taking small steps toward it. You don't need to replay every mistake when you're willing to learn from it and continue. Action gives thought somewhere to go. Experience gives the mind new information. Living answers questions that thinking alone cannot answer. So the next time you catch yourself thinking about your life, pause. Not physically. Just notice. Ask, am I experiencing this moment? Or am I experiencing my thoughts about this moment? You might be surprised by the answer. You're drinking coffee, but you're thinking about work. You're walking, but you're thinking about tomorrow. You're talking, but you're thinking about what you'll say next. You're watching a movie, but you're checking your phone. You're lying beside someone, but you're somewhere inside your own head. And none of this makes you broken. It's what minds do. They wander, they predict, they remember, they analyze. But you don't have to follow every place the mind goes. Your thoughts are happening inside your experience. They are not the whole of your experience. That's an important distinction. You can have a thought about sadness while also hearing music. You can have anxiety while feeling the ground beneath your feet. You can think about the past while watching the present happen. You can worry about tomorrow while the sun is shining right now. The mind can tell you a story while life is happening underneath the story. And sometimes, wisdom begins when you notice the difference. You don't have to stop thinking. You don't have to become permanently present. You don't have to turn yourself into some perfectly peaceful person who never worries. You're human. Your mind will wander. You'll replay things. You'll plan. You'll worry. You'll imagine. That's normal. The practice is much simpler. Come back. Come back to the conversation. Come back to the food. Come back to the walk. Come back to the person in front of you. Come back to your body. Come back to the room. Come back to this moment. Again, and again, and again. Because one day, you may look back at your life and realize something. You were waiting for life to become clear enough to live. But life was happening the entire time. The moments you thought were insignificant were your life. The ordinary mornings. The stupid conversations. The meals. The walks. The awkward moments. The failures. The laughter. The uncertainty. The people who came and went. The days you didn't think mattered. They were not preparation for your life. They were your life. And you don't get to go back and experience them again. So maybe you don't need to figure everything out. Maybe you don't need to understand exactly where your life is going. Maybe you don't need the perfect explanation for everything that happened. Maybe you don't need to know what tomorrow will bring. Maybe you simply need to become willing to experience what is here. Not because thinking is useless, but because thought can describe life, and description is not experience. You can describe the ocean for years. You can study its chemistry, measure its depth, calculate its waves, watch thousands of videos, read every book, and still, you haven't felt the water. At some point, you have to leave the shore. You have to step into the ocean. You have to feel the cold. You have to lose your balance. You have to learn how to float. You have to actually be there. And maybe that's what life has been asking from you all along. Not another explanation. Not another plan. Not another answer. Just your presence. So look up, listen, feel, move, talk to someone, go somewhere, create something, try something, let yourself be surprised. Let yourself not know. Let yourself experience something without immediately turning it into a thought. Because your life is not happening somewhere in the future. When you finally understand it, it's not waiting for you in some perfect version of yourself. It's happening right now. Underneath the commentary, underneath the analysis, underneath the endless questions, right here. And maybe, for a moment, you don't need to think about your life. You can simply live it.